Okay, that's nice. So welcome from me as well. I'm chairman of the training working group, and I have been involved with HOT since late 2012, just as an ordinary mapper, and later on got more and more involved in the training working group. So in the first part of this talk here, I'll be mentioning something about layer handling. I'm sure you either watched our introductory JOSM webinar or watched its recording on our YouTube channel or through some other means are more or less familiar. So you know how to download data and how to switch on some imagery. And first of all, I would like to talk about this here in the upper right corner. This is the Layers tab. You see, I've got some downloaded data and I've got some imagery in the background. And usually when by default, it arranges all the data layers on top and all the imagery layers below that. And you could imagine this is some kind of vertical stack. That means if I switch off this Maxar imagery layer, then you will see the Bing imagery below. You can alter the sequence using these arrow keys here. So for instance, if I move the Bing imagery here on top of the Maxar layer, then it becomes visible. There are a few reasons why you might want to play around with that. So in the second part of this introduction here, I will be talking about alignment issues, and when we talk about alignment issues between imagery and data, one thing which can greatly help us is if some GPS traces are available. So if you're not sure if anything is properly aligned, you might want to look. If you see some GPS traces, they can be downloaded pretty much in the same way as the OpenStreetMap data. So you have this familiar download window, and normally you see OpenStreetMap data checked here on top. And if you check raw GPS data and then download here from this area, then we will see a new layer here in this Layers tab for downloaded GPX data. Unfortunately, it is a bit buried down there, and so you might get a glimpse that there is something here along this main road, but you don't see it really well. So what I usually do is I put this layer on top. It means I press this arrow button as long as it's on top, and then it becomes visible much more prominently. And with a context menu with your right mouse button, you can also customize the color. I usually use this pink stuff because hardly anything else is drawn in pink, so this will always stand out. And you can also customize track drawing, where you can, for instance, widen the width of the lines, or draw large GPS points, and that makes things way clearer. So that is usually one of the settings I prefer. And then you can see, well, apart from that here, from that curve here, from that bend, all this here seems pretty much well aligned. So putting the GPX data on top is certainly something useful. Then another layer which is typically of interest, if you're drawing waterways, then and you only have a look at such a small excerpt here, then you simply don't know in which way is the water flow going, and that is how the line should be oriented. So we have an imagery layer which greatly helps, and that is the cycle map layer, which is also available on the front side of the OpenStreetMap webpage. And well, if you look at the imagery, then first of all, you don't see it in here, but you can easily get it. Simply go to the imagery preferences, and then here we've got OpenCycleMap, one of these options. You simply have to activate it, that it becomes part of your menu. Then we can get here the OpenCycleMap layer. And this layer has shaded relief and contour lines, and as we can be pretty certain that water is always flowing downhill, particularly, well, in this case it's easy because here it's flowing towards the sea, but let me just switch that layer off here. But here you can can pretty clearly recognize that this here is a hilly area and somehow we are going downhill there. And if you zoom in more closely, you will be able to read the elevation figures here at the contour lines. And in this way, it is pretty often quite easy to tell what is the direction of flow of a waterway. Another feature which is helpful in this respect is that you can tune the visibility of this layer. So let's just use OpenCycleMap here. And with this icon here, for each layer, you can tune the opacity. So that means you can make the other imagery layers more or less visible. This is always something helpful in case you just want to see your imagery below these contour lines. So just tune a little bit with opacity or for instance, this gamma value. And so you nearly get contour lines above your imagery. This might really be helpful in identifying mountainous hilly areas or the flow of waterway and things like that. So just to wrap this up, you can easily change the sequence of your imagery layers with these buttons. You can change the opacity and gamma values of your imagery layers. And as far as GPX data are concerned, you can customize color and track drawing so that you can get the most out of it and make it as visible as possible above your data layers. So data alignment, that is something else we need to talk about. Frequently, when you will be mapping in a humanitarian context, you won't be starting from scratch, but you will see an area where things have already been mapped. You will also be told that some imagery is to be used, but unfortunately, mapping is not always going in sync with the imagery. So let me just select another area here. Don't need the cycle map layer any longer. And well, this here is a layer which is obviously not too closely aligned. As you can see here, there is some shift here in the imagery between, well, the imagery and the previous mapping, which we saw here. There are basically a few things to keep in mind. First of all, have a look at the scale. Here, the imagery shift might be something like 2 meters, at most 3 meters. When the shift is, let's say, less than 10 meters, there is hardly any way to tell you which is the absolute truth, because even if we see GPS traces, also GPS has an accuracy of about a few meters under good visibility conditions. So anything below 10 meters, I would say go for the least resistance, because you always have two options. You can either align imagery to existing mapping, or you can align the existing mapping to the imagery. But when you see such a situation here with many buildings and many of them unfortunately really connected, like here in these occasions, adjusting all that existing mapping to some imagery will be a simple nightmare. So don't worry about that. We better shift the imagery so that it aligns with the mapping. Other than that, if you just have 3 or 4 buildings mapped and they are misaligned, just move those buildings in alignment with the imagery. There is something you might want to know about, and that is the imagery alignment database. It is one of the plugins you can configure in JOSM, and then you get here a download offset for current imagery from a server icon. And this means, depending on your current selected imagery and depending on the area, it gives you a couple of suggestions of entries in the database, which were filled by other users. Those entries always apply to a specific imagery. So once an imagery layer is active, it will only be presented with database values conforming to that particular imagery. And as this Maxar Premium is a relatively new layer, there is nothing else in the database. So I made sure there is something in, added that before. So it tells me, oh, there is an imagery shift towards the north-northwest by 100 something meters. And if you just click on your mouse there, it should get shifted a little bit for some reason. It was already active. Okay, so that's the previous one.
Michael, there's a bit of a lag between what you show, probably what
okay,
you're
I'll be slower. Okay,
yes,
slower. So that is the original situation. We see that the imagery is shifted with respect to the existing mapping. And when I click on that database entry, now, at least with those buildings here in the lower part, it's way better. So it is always a good thing to try and figure that out. And if you found that there had been no entry previously, you might want to store that. So the imagery menu always has a store imagery offset entry here. And then you can simply give a meaningful name, should be the nearest town or so, and the country, of course. And then your determined offset becomes part of that imagery database.
So a question to that. So what is the scope of that offset? Because are you moving the whole world, or are you?
I'm not moving the whole world. I'm moving the imagery layer with respect to the existing mapping. This is something which you can also do using this adjust imagery offset icon. You select the layer which you want to move around, and then you can either enter fixed values, or if you don't want that, simply use your left mouse button. And then now you can shift the imagery with respect to all other layers, with respect to mapping and with respect to GPX layers. So you could adjust the imagery so that it closely or best matches the existing image, the existing mapping. And afterwards you confirm that with OK, and then you're done. And for your mapping session, this will be the new imagery situation. When you close JOSM and reopen it, it always opens all imagery layers with 0 offset, so that you don't get confused, because those offsets will vary across the globe. But if you find a situation like this, you want to improve some mapping, you want to add some buildings, you typically would want to start shifting your imagery, because there are way too many objects already mapped. And they probably have been mapped to with respect to different imageries. So you don't want to shift all that so that it matches this one imagery. So typically, if there are just a few houses visible or other objects, move the objects so that they conform with the new imagery. Otherwise, adjust the imagery as long as it's less than, say, something like 10 meters. If you observe a larger deviation between imagery and objects, that's weird. If you are working on a hot project, then you should definitely notify the project manager so that he can have a look whether this is a general trend, or at least include a warning in the instructions, because, well, there might always be errors in imagery processing, and particularly when it's a hilly area, just they have to distort the imageries, and that is always a bit tricky. So even in one of those examples I showed previously, let me return to this one.
So the 126 meters that you were showing earlier was for a completely different part of the world?
No, it was it was just 1 or 2 kilometers away, maybe. What I wanted to show you, what you can see sometime, just put that away, is this road looks pretty perfect. It looks pretty, but it doesn't look so perfect if you have a look at the Bing imagery. And as you can see, here is an offset in the imagery. So that means here they stitched, the imagery provider, in this case Bing, stitched 2 images together, but for some reason there is a certain offset. Well, here it's a bit below 10 meters, but well, let's hope that the road is indeed continuous. So it's not the first time I see that. I can show you other examples like this one here. where it's a bit more drastic. Such situations do occur. And so whenever I want to map a tile for a hot project, I always move around a little bit and have a look if the imagery looks somehow consistent, or if I have to experience some shifts like that. So imagery alignment is not that easy a topic, but just keep in mind the rule of thumb is anything of a few meters, it's not worth looking for absolute truth, because there is none. Just go for least effort. If there are just a few objects mapped, realign those that they match the imagery. Otherwise, move the imagery so that it conforms to existing mapping and go ahead. And if it's a hot project and you notice some distortions or larger deviations, notify the project manager so that he can have a look what's going on there. Either recommend different imagery or at least put a warning into the instructions. That is basically what I wanted to tell about layer handling and imagery alignment. I think, Ross, we might have a short Q&A section if there are some questions. Wasn't able to follow the chat, by the way. Don't know if there is something which occurred. Otherwise, I'm done with that first part.
Yeah, there were no questions in the chat, so I guess we'll give a minute if anybody wants to unmute and ask anything. Yeah, if not, I guess I think Geoffrey's up next.
Okay, share my screen now. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Geoffrey Katerega. Based in Uganda, working with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team. Yeah, I've been involved with HOT since 2014. So I'm going to be taking you through the concept of layers and also how to get data into OpenStreetMap from the tasking manager. So I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the tasking manager and also talk a little bit about layers. So what you're seeing on my screen is JOSM. And what I'm going to do now is to bring in data from the tasking manager and also talk about layers. So I'm going to switch to the tasking manager now. For those of you who are not familiar with the tasking manager, it is a tool that we use for coordinated mapping. So basically, you have an area divided into grids of squares, and you just have to choose one to work on. And basically, I'll just go to start mapping, and there is normally a list of projects to work on, and where you just have to select one. So I'm just going to choose an example of a project in the Philippines, mapping for food security, just to show as an example. So this is my project. After reading through the instructions, I'll go on to the mapping bit. Reading through the instructions, of course, is very important to make sure you're using the right imagery and also you're mapping according to the instructions. And you can either select a task at random, or you can zoom in and choose any tile square of your choice. So I've just selected one, and then I would start mapping. And if my interest is to use JOSM, it's important to make sure that your JOSM is already running. As you can see, my JOSM is already running. And one of the important things to set up is the remote control. which you find in Edit and then Preferences. And the one that I'm more interested in, just to make sure my tasking manager communicates with JOSM, is to enable the remote control. So you have to enable remote control and then click OK. Yeah, so your JOSM is running and your remote control is enabled. So when you come here, there are different editors. So ID editor, JOSM, make sure I select JOSM here. So that means if I click Start Editor, my project should, my square should open up in JOSM. So my data is now downloading in JOSM, and you can see it is loaded. So this is an automatic process because tasking manager is communicating with JOSM. So on the right-hand side, you can see the layers panel, and that's the first thing to note, that everything that I add will be added as layers. So OSM data is loaded, and that's the layer that we're going to be editing. But to be able to edit that, then we have to add other imagery. So I'm going to add the digital globe premium imagery, which is the imagery that we're supposed to use according to the instructions. So the imagery is loaded now. And you can see, so there is a message here that the imagery might be misaligned. Please check its offset using GPS tracks. And this is what Michael has just talked about in the previous session. So I'll hide, remove this message. And right now I have 2 layers. So this would be enough for me to, to continue mapping, but I'm just going to add a few more layers just to be able to talk about the concept of layers. So I'm also going to add a Bing aerial. So now I have 3 layers, and I'll also add Esri world imagery. One of the importances of adding different imagery is also to compare which one is the latest, because they have different capture dates. But if you're following the instructions from the tasking manager, that should be clearly stated which imagery you're supposed to use. One of the important things to note on the layers, of course, is moving your layers. So right now I'm having my OSM data, which is on top. But using this arrow, which is pointing down, the blue one, I can change the order of my layers. So right now I've moved the OSM data layer to the last row below, but I can also move it back on top. And you realize here I'll not be able to edit because it is not in the right order. So when you're mapping, always make sure that your data layer, OSM data layer, is on top. Of course, it is transparent. That's why you can be able to see the image, the imagery below it. The other thing that is important to note is that you can hide and unhide your layers. So using the icon that looks like an eye, the blue one, I can switch on and off the data layer. So that's the other important thing to note. So like right now, I can compare between Esri and Bing imagery just by switching it on and off. I can also compare digital globe with Bing, and you can see there is no big difference because almost nothing is changing. Yeah, but there is a difference between Esri imagery and digital globe imagery. The other thing that is important here is you can change the visibility of a selected layer. So, for example, if I select digital globe imagery here, I may want to change how it looks like in terms of visibility. So the change visibility icon is the fourth one in the layers panel. So if I click on that, I get more controls. So I can change the opacity of a layer. I can change the color fullness. So this is useful. Sometimes you may get imagery which is a little bit grayed out, but you have the option of giving it more color by adjusting the visibility of the layer. You can also change the gamma. You can also change the sharpness of the layer. The other thing that is useful still on the layers panel is that you can delete a layer. You can remove it from your layers panel by using the delete button. So basically, you just have to select layer and then click on the delete button. That one will remove the layer from the list. So I've just removed a being. I'm also going to remove Esri. So what this does is that it removes the layer from the list. If you are removing the data layer, you have to be careful, because if you have worked on some, made some edits, and then you delete the layer, that means you lose your changes. So you have to make sure you have uploaded your data before you remove that layer, in case you don't want to lose the changes. The other thing that is important is activating a layer. So right now it is my data layer which is active, and I know that because there is a green tick that is on the line of the data layer that I can change and make the digital globe imagery layer active. So that means you can make changes to that layer. This is useful to know because sometimes you want to do some mapping and you find out that the toolbar is inactive. Like you can't edit anything because your data layer is not active. So what you're supposed to do in that case is to come and activate the data layer again. And when you're able to see the data layer, that means you can make changes to the map. So I see there is a hand. I'll pause here and take any questions that you have.
What changes would you want to make to imagery layers?
Okay, one change that you may want to make to the, you can't edit the imagery layer, but you can be able to change the colors, the opacity. If you have like GPX tracks, as Michael was demonstrating in the previous session, you can change the color of the GPX layer. So for the imagery, there's nothing much you can do apart from changing the visibility. Does that answer a question?
Almost. You said that there may be reasons to actually activate the imagery layer, and I'm not sure that's necessary after what you've shown, because
the only reason why I pointed that out is sometimes people run into issues when it is the imagery layer that is activated and they don't
okay,
find...
so it's almost like you've accidentally activated it, but in normal work you wouldn't want to activate anything other than your own data layer.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Okay, welcome. Okay, yeah, if there is no other question, I'll hand over back to Russ. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Geoffrey. Yeah, I think I got everybody's questions in the chat. So if I missed anything, yeah, keep chatting with me there, or yeah, I'll give it a minute before Ralph takes over. If anybody wants to unmute and ask anything. All right, I guess Ralph, it's yours.
We cannot hear you yet, Ralph.
Yeah, Ralph, you're muted.
Right, hello folks. Here I am. I'm going to try and share my screen, and I hope you can see that. What I've got posted there, we're going to be looking at using the shortcut keys and drawing more complex items on the map so that you can understand. Sorry, am I coming over loud and clear?
Yes, you are.
Great. Okay. Right. Do you guys want to do a quick screenshot of that so that you've got a copy of the tools that we're using? I'll show you where you can actually find the shortcut keys, but if you want to take a copy of this to start with, you're quite welcome. I'll give you a few moments to hit your print screen and get that done. I will, as I'm going along, I will call out the actual keys that I am using so that you will know what is happening and how I am creating it. And I will also tell you a couple of options that you do have to speed things up or to get things better. Right, I'm going to move on now and get rid of that and come up with my JOSM. Oh, sorry about that. Right, the first thing that we're going to do is have a look at something that a lot of people seem to have a bit of difficulty with.
Not sure yet.
And don't seem to understand. So we're going to first of all go to road-river intersections. What happens when a road and a river occupy the same space or cross over each other?
Ralph, it's not yet showing. Not at least on my screen, it's not yet showing anything.
Not yet showing.
It's just I'm still looking at the keyboard shortcuts.
It says my screen share is paused. Okay, resume share. How's that?
Okay, yes, now I see stuff happening, but JOSM is not yet on the front.
Okay, I've got to try and find how to get JOSM there.
Sometimes what people do is they accidentally share only their browser rather than their whole desktop.
Okay.
So you may want to stop sharing and then share again, either just JOSM or your whole desktop to make sure that.
Okay, now let's just see if I can share JOSM. Okay. How's that?
That's great.
Okay, right. What I'm going to do is we're going to start off by showing you how to do the various ways that roads and rivers intersect and cross over. Right, I have a number of items that I have pre-prepared. So I'll go into these items. And here I have the Caledon River in South Africa, which is quite a major river. And to show you the first example is we have is a bridge, right? There are three ways that we do road river crossings. One is a bridge, the other is a culvert, and the third is a ford. The bridge goes over the river And you can generally see that there's a bridge there from the shadow and the difference in road. Okay, let's just add the road in for you so that we have a road. Select, add a tag. Let's make it highway tertiary. Okay, and we've got a highway tertiary that's going over a river. How do we manage this? Right, the first thing is to isolate this section of the bridge, because we only want to tag that part of the road as a bridge. So we press the shortcut key A, and we put a node at one end of the bridge. Press escape to come away from that. We put a node at the other end of the bridge. We select, press S key to select one node, hold down the shift key, select the other node on the other side. Now, to isolate this piece of bridge, we just press the P key, and that has now isolated that piece of road from the rest. You will see it is still a highway tertiary, but it is isolated from the rest. I can now add tags to this piece of road without affecting the other parts of the road. The tags that we would set for a bridge, I normally do add bridge, and yes, I don't know what kind of bridge it is. It could be a cantilever, it could be an arched bridge. I don't know what kind of bridge it is. So I'm just going to say bridge yes, and leave that up to the experts to decide what the bridge is. I press OK, and now you can see that the bridge has been tagged as bridge yes. But now I need to show that this bridge goes over the river. It's not at the same level of the river. If I left it at the same level of the river, I would get a conflict by saying that road and river cross without a proper intersection. The way to do that is to add a layer. Okay, so I am going to put in a layer, and it's above the river, so I will put in layer 1. Okay, now that bridge is above the river and the river goes underneath, so we don't have a conflict. We can run the validator tool for that and see what happens. And it says warnings 3, unnamed ways only. So there's 3 parts to the road, and each part of those is an unnamed way. We don't worry about unnamed ways. I can't see the street signs from here, so I don't know what the name of the road is. Not a worry. But the bridge is acceptable and is very good OSM mapping. We're now going to move on and have a look at the next type of road river crossing. I'm going to put in the stream, press A. Select, add, Waterway, stream. Okay, right, so I've got my stream going there, and I'm going to take my road over the top of it. Okay, if I do a validation, crossing highway waterway, ouch, doesn't like that. Do you see? So zooming in, we will see that there's no bridge here. The road doesn't change in color, it doesn't change in height. But what we can see is, let me switch off the layer, and you can see here that little black mark there is a shadow which shows that there is a culvert underneath the road here. That means the road runs level and the river is below the road, and there is a concrete pipe or culvert or underneath to allow the river to run through, the stream to run through. How do we deal with that? Right, let's switch on again. This time the selection is on the river and not on the road. Once again, press A to add a node on one side of the road, and press and a node on the other side of the road on the river. Select 1, Shift 2. You've got both selected. Press the P key again, and you have isolated that piece of river from the other main stream, right? That has been isolated. We are now going to add, still contains the tag Waterway stream, but we're going to add a tunnel, tunnel, and the type of tunnel is a culvert. Okay, right, now we have that, but that's still not good. We have to show that the river actually goes underneath the road. So we once again go back to that, and we add another tag, which is again the layer tag, but this time we're going to go below, so we're going to go -1, right? And we now have layer -1. Okay, that stream now goes underneath the road. If I run the validation again, we only have unnamed ways. The waterway ends without a connection. That's because I didn't complete the waterway. So ignore that. But you see that the river road crossing problem has gone. That is the way to do a culvert.
Ralph.
Waterway stream, your waterway river, your tunnel culvert, and your layer -1.
Ralph, quick question here. So obviously this layer that you've just used, the layer -1, has nothing to do with the layers that we see on the top, right? That those are completely different types of layers.
Right,
this
okay.
is,
yes, what we're talking about here is in actual fact the actual plane that you're mapping on. So in other words, you're looking at this as something as being above or below something else. So this has nothing to do with this has got nothing to do with the layers of the actual selection of what you're working on.
But I'm just asking, like you picked +1 and -1. Are there situations where perhaps there may be even more, and you have to see what other layers are already there, and how would you do that?
All right, let's just say that this road went under was in actual fact in a tunnel. Okay, we would then make the road as -1 because it's below the ground, so that you've got power lines and other things going on above the tunnel. So that you would make the road as the tunnel. But if the road is already at -1 and there's still a stream that goes below that, the stream would then take on the level -2, so that it would go below the road that's in the tunnel. So yes, you have to be careful about what layer the data is that is above the stream as to what it goes. You will also come across doing this layering when you do multi-story buildings. You can set the layers of 4, 5, 6 stories. So the layering is useful, but the layering that I'm talking about here is about the level on the map and not the layers in your selection of what you're working on.
Great, wonderful.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, now for the third type, I'm going to go along the road here. Okay, and we'll come to here. I'm going to use this, press A again, and add in the stream so that you can see what we're talking about. Right, select, add waterway stream, right, and we've got our stream, and we've got a road. So I'll press A again and just quickly add the road in. Select and put highway unclassified. Okay, right, there's our setup. We've got the scenario. I didn't want that. Let's take that out. So let's just press G so that I unglue that from the stream. Right. What I'm going to do is run the validator again, and you will see that we once again have crossing a highway waterway. Now, this is where a road runs through the river. In other words, it actually goes through the river. Now, this happens quite a lot in Africa and in other parts of countries where in most times of the year, the river is completely dry, or it's just a small stream, in which case you can drive straight over it, or should I say straight through it. So this road and river, stream, whatever, are at the same level. Okay. Now, to handle this, you press A and move your cursor until both the stream and the road are highlighted, and click. Escape, and you have a node which joins the two. Press select, select the node, and what you're going to do is add a forward. That's forward, yes, and press OK, and you will see that the node has changed color. This is now put a forward. You don't need a layer because both the stream and the road are at the same level. So you don't need to add a layer to say one goes underneath or the other goes over or whichever. So we run the validator again, and our crossing highway stream has disappeared. Okay, those are the three examples of road river crossings that you would normally use. I'm going to get rid of this now and go in, and I'm going to take you to another part of the world.
Ralph, just before we go, one more quick question. So you showed very nicely how to isolate, for example, the bridge or the culvert, and you used some shortcut, but I've already forgotten what the shortcut was because you know, there's no mnemonic or something. What was the shortcut, or what does it stand for?
Okay, here the shortcut is P, which would isolate them. But if you have a look at your tools up here, okay.
It's the split, the P in split. I see.
There's the P for shortcut, combine ways, reverse ways. So all your shortcuts are actually up here in your tools. So you can see all the shortcuts here. If you get to know the shortcuts, you don't have to keep coming up to the tools to click split object or unglue relation. If you just remember from common usage that your shortcut keys, your mapping actually goes a lot quicker. Wonderful. So now there are ways of using presets, but I'll speak about those just now. We're going to go on to a different part of the world. We're going to Coro in Venezuela. Right. Here we're going to use some different tools. This part of the world is quite nice to do because it has quite a few examples of this sort of consistent same size buildings. But the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to align a road. Here, this road is slightly off. The crossroads are fine, but that should be a straight line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the nodes on this road, right? And I want them all in a straight line. Now, what will happen is that they will all jump into a straight line without affecting the diagonal roads. I just use the shortcut key L, and they jump there. Okay, that same shortcut key, align nodes in a line, L. Okay, I will reverse that and show you that if you use the tools, you would have to go up here, click on that. It would do the same function. But to save all that trouble, remember the shortcut key. Okay? Now, what we're going to do here is have a look at how we're going to very quickly map this. Rather than doing individual buildings, I first have a look to see what is happening here. Is that one single building, or is that a couple of buildings? I look further down here, I see that's one building and that's another. I see here's that same building, but there's no building there, the same here. So these are two separate buildings. Another way to see that is, of course, there's a gap between the buildings there. There's a gap between the roof there. So I can see that these are two separate buildings, right? I can also see that it's slightly oblique angle. So the roof is not directly above its footprint because the camera angle is coming from the side. This gap I've shown you has got space between it, but this gap hasn't. So that what you are seeing there is the shadow of a roof. This is a higher roof than that one, and it's throwing a shadow onto the lower roof. That is not a gap between the buildings. Right, so let's draw the buildings. We use our building tool. So I press the shortcut key B, and I get the building tool, and I draw escape. Okay, what I've got here is set building size. I don't want the building size at this stage. I'll explain that later. So what I'm going to do is take that out. Oh, come on. Naught. Okay, right. Use my building tool. My building tool, I create the size, select that, and just move it onto its footprint. Okay, this building, B, draw the size, select, and move it onto its footprint. Now I have the two together, and I now want to repeat that across all of these. So what I do is I press down Shift and I select the second one. So I've got both of those selected. I use the Control C to copy, and using my selection tool, I use Control V, and lo and behold, I have it. I move it onto its footprint. I Control V, I've got another one, and I move that onto its footprint. Control V, and I've got another one. And so you can keep doing that. Okay, you can also do it individual buildings. Let's just say copy, Control copy, Control V. Now I've selected just the single building, but now what happens if this is a different size? Okay, I will then need to resize it. So once again, I use my shortcut keys, Control, Alt, and I get this, and I can resize the building to fit, okay? And I can do that. This also works if we are doing circular buildings. Let me show you if we can change our cursor to building shape circle. That's Alt Z, right? Alt R will take it back to a rectangle. Alt Z will then give you a circle. So here I have my building tool is set for rectangle. Let's select, delete. Right, now I'm going to do Alt, building tool, Alt Z. And you'll see that my cursor has changed. Now all I need to do is do the diameter of a circular building, and the entire building comes up. Okay, now you have to remember that that bullet tool for circle will remain like that until you press Alt R again and then it'll change back to the ordinary building tool. Okay, remember that, Alt-Z, Alt-R to quickly change your building tool from circle back. Let's have a look at the circle, right? We can, using the Control Alt, move to get it bigger, move closer to make it smaller. So you can copy, Control Copy, Control V, ouch. Let's get rid of that. Select, Control Copy, Control V, and enlarge or reduce, because these circular buildings are never really all the same size. So that's a very quick, easy way of being able to do those circular buildings. Right, now, I've shown you how to resize this. But what happens if the angle changes? You have buildings all the same size, but the angles are all different. There's two ways you can do that. There is either this way, where you do Control Copy, Control V, and then you press down the Shift and Control key, and that allows you to rotate the building around its central axis. Okay? So you can reposition, adjust the actual angle of the building. Okay, that is Shift Control. Okay, let's get rid of that. Now, there is another way to do this if you have a whole lot of same size buildings that are in actual fact all at different angles. And if you go up into your data and you can set your building size. Okay, so let's take this building and check. I've got a size, which is one of the plugins. I've got my size down here at the bottom. I can check the size. I press my building tool, click on one node and take it across to the next node. And I can see down the bottom that it says it's 13.5. And if I check the other side, it is 9.9 meters, right? You can see that down the bottom there, 9.9 meters, right? I press Escape to come away from that. So I will then go into my data, set building size, and this comes up. So the width is 9, go away, 9.9, and the length is 13.5. Okay, so I've got my building tool, rectangle, and I want to set that. And there is my size, and I can change the angle on the corner. So just remember to select the corner of the building and the direction, and then you can change the angle and the length of it as it is, right? You see? Right, so that's if you need to do buildings of different angles and lengths, but the same width, the same size. That's another option that you have. Let's get rid of these. Right. I will come out of this now. If there's any questions at this stage.
Very handy little tools.
Sorry?
I was just remarking that these are very handy little shortcuts that you're showing. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I find that once you know and understand the shortcuts, it goes so quickly because you can interchange between tools, and you can set sizes. I want to change the building size back to 0 for my next section. Okay, right. I'm going to come out of this. If there are no more further questions, I'm going to come out of this. Now we're going to take a look at some more complex building shapes. So I'm going to get rid of this, right, and go back into my file and go to my hometown of Portsmouth in good old UK. Right, what I've got here is some buildings that have been done already. I'm not happy about this one. I can see that there are parts of the building that have not been included. This front piece here, these side little pieces have all not been included. I can see that this is a higher roof than that little piece there because this casts a shadow onto it. So I can see that. Plus, of course, I can see here that those are separate individual places. How do I check for whether if you have a large complex like this, which is multi-story, you cannot subdivide it because you don't know what's inside. However, when you go to places like this, you can check what's happening by having a look at the different gardens and see what is happening. Here, the person has been very good at mapping. You can see there's a garden wall, there's a garden wall, there's a garden wall, and each one has a building on its plot, you see? That was very good. But someone got lazy and did this. This is very poor mapping. This doesn't help anyone. We can't put individual building addresses. We can't work out how many properties there are there or how many families live there. You see, this is very poor. It doesn't give any shapes of buildings or anything. So this is the ideal, where you have an individual property on each piece of ground. Right. So we're going to look at this one. Now, I don't want to lose the history. The person who drew this originally went to quite a bit of trouble to create it. So I don't want to lose the history. So I'm going to move that to one side and start creating afresh, right? I'm going to first look at this and look for the main body of the building, because the largest part is where you get the alignment correct. Right, so I've selected this central chord here. I press the building tool and I go all the way to the end, lining it up and take it out across to there. Now I've got the central core of the building. One way of adding an extra piece on is to select the building, use your building tool, and just add a piece on. Select that, select the other building, and holding down your shift key, press J. Now, this is great if this is building yes, or because when you draw with your building tool, it always comes up as building yes. But what happens if this building is in actual fact tagged apartments? Apartments, okay. And I then try to add on. I use my building tool and I add on. I select, shift, highlight that and press J. And I have a conflict. Why? Because the one says yes and the other says apartments. How does it know which one is correct? The building yes or the building apartments? So you get a conflict when you do it this way. So I'm going to show you another way of doing that, which means you will not have to worry about changing the tagging. Taking this as the building that you want to add onto, I press the X key, the extrude. You see the cursor has changed. I double click where I want a node, and I double click where I want a node. Then I grab the line in between and I just drag it outwards. I then double click again and drag it outwards. And I have a complex shape, and I have not had a conflict with my apartments because all I've done is extended the same building, right? So I can do that without worrying about the tags, right? And extend. Right, I can do the same at each section for each part of the building. Now, there is a piece of building that I want to add in, but I can't do that unless I use a little bit of cleverness. I double click there and I take this side of the building and I drag that outwards, and it takes that side away. So there we are, we've got that. We can do extending outwards here as well. And so you can build up your building by double clicking and extending, double clicking and extending. Right, this is part of the same building complex. So I'm going to do the same here, double click and extend. Right, that has worked very well. Now, once again, we have that little piece there, double click and extend. But what happens when you get something like this? A little angle that you want to add in. That's easy. All you do is you press the A key and you add a node at the one end, press escape, add a node at the other end, press escape, select tool, click on this node and delete it, and the angle is there, right? Right, we're going to extend out here as well, but I am now going to make these individual units because I believe they are individual. This is part of the main building. So I'm going to go X key again and extend out to there. Now, I want to make that I pressed escape. Now I'm going to make this a separate building. To do that, I will go back to my building tool. I click on that node. I make sure I'm on the line here, and I click again. I extend the building outwards. You see that the node is quite large compared to the other one. That means that I have correctly clicked on the line and connected the buildings. Again, I've connected the building there, but I need to extend this one. So I use my X key again, and I extend the building outwards. And I have now a separate building that is clearly apartments, and that is now building yes. So it is clearly not a part of it. So again, I can do that all along here. Right, so escape so that it's not highlighted. Use my building tool and I start there, and I extend outwards and just keep doing that. Right, so we've got all of those, but here we have, again, little angle piece. Now, the problem that we have with the angle piece is that it's a part of this building, not this building. So you want to make sure that that building is included on there, but this one is already joined here. So what I can do is, that is where I want the building to change direction, shape of the roof. So I press A key and I put a node there and I escape. I then press this, select this building, hold down the shift key, highlight that node. Now I've got that. I press G, and that unglues the node from that building to there. Get rid of that node, delete, and select the node you want to move, because I want to merge it to that point. I select that node, I hold down the Shift key, and I select the node that I want it to go to. And I press the M key, and it jumps to it, right? So that has created the angle of this roof. Okay, at this point, are there any questions? No? Okay, I'm going to go a little bit further up.
There was one in the chat from Daniel. He was asking to if you could do the resizing tool again. Just demonstrate that again for him.
Yes, certainly. I'll do that. Okay, resizing tool. I'm going to let me just do a quick building here. Okay, right. I have the building here. I select the building, and once I have selected the outline, not the nodes, don't select the nodes, and your cursor is in the selection cursor mode. So you have pressed S for your selection. Okay. You've highlighted the building, and to resize, you press down the Control and Alt key. You're in the selection mode, Control, Alt, and then you move it away or towards your feature, and it resizes. Again, in the select mode, you hold down the Shift and Control, and you can change the angle. Okay. Has that answered your question?
Yeah, Daniel, we're not hearing you, so.
Can I carry on?
I saw he came off mute, so I thought maybe he was going to ask a clarification.
Okay, right. All right, I'm going to go here. Once again, here's, has this been lazy mapping? No. This has come from a different source, OS Open Data Street View. Now, that does not look anything like what's there. Remember, I said that I would move this out the way because I did not want to lose the history. So I select the new one that I've done. I select the old one that was there, and I hold down the Shift key. I hold down the Control key, and I press G. You want to combine two objects, but the following tags are conflicting. Yes, so I do that, and I have a window that pops up to choose a value. Okay, now there we have the building, and if I use the Control H, and up comes the history, and it's got the original person who drew and my new building as well. It was building yes, and it's now building apartments. So I've maintained the history of that building. So in OpenStreetMap, we very much prefer the history to be maintained rather than deleting something and just redrawing it. Please remember that. It's Shift, Control, press G once you've highlighted both of them. So I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to move that out the way. I see here from the gardens that this is two separate buildings, not one. So I'm going to draw the one building there. Okay, now I've got that. Now I want that to have the history. So I hold that down. I hold the Shift key and I hold the old one down. I press the Control and G. Yes. Right. So there we have it. We've got that. But remember I said this is two buildings. Now here's, if you've got something with equal sizes all the way along, you don't need to draw each one individually. We have what is called the Terracing Tool, where you can terrace a building, and the shortcut is Shift T. Okay, so I'm going to use this and use the Shift T key. I get a window that comes up, which is terrace a house. You can do quite a lot with this, but we're just going to do the subdivision. You can tell how many segments. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or in this case, there's just 2. Okay, and it will subdivide it over its longest length. I'm going to subdivide it by 2. It is building yes. Okay, and there we have it, automatically done. Now, if this was 4, 5, or 6, it would be quite a good time saver to just split them all in one single go. I now have that ready. I can now attach buildings to it. So I press my building key and I extend a building outwards. I use my X key and I extend that outwards. I add a node, double clicking, and extend that outwards. Hey, we have another one. Right, I want to extend this out, so I double click and extend that out. Now, I have a problem. I want to extend this out, but I need it to connect to the other building. So what I do is I use the escape tool to deselect that. I use the building tool and I click on that node. I click on that node and I click on that node. Now that links everything up. I select this and I hold down the Shift key and I select that and I hold down the select and press join. Combine, yes, and now I have them combined. This node is now surplus to requirements. We don't need it. Select that and delete. This node is surplus to requirements. Select that and delete. It's much better to get rid of rogue nodes that they don't crop up and cause problems later. Right, so you've seen me use the Shift Control G to replace the history with on the new building. You've seen me use the terracer to subdivide a single long building. Are there any more questions at this stage?
Yeah, there's a couple in chat. Let me back up here. I've got private chats going too, so my chat screen's a little full right now. Yeah, Robert had a question. Can you go through adding adjacent buildings on the existing ones?
Yes, you can add whatever you like. If there's a garage alongside building, click on the node, and just extend it outwards, and you have an extra building. So you can carry on adding extra buildings or extending the existing building. So use your building tool to add another building, and just make sure that the nodes are connected. I have a problem. Please be very careful with this and make sure that your nodes connect. We have problems of overlapping buildings where someone has not completely connected. I'll show you what happens. Your building tool, building, and you don't quite connect to that node, and you get a problem. When I validate, I'm going to have errors coming up because those are overlapping buildings. Okay, plenty of warnings: crossing building, residential area, crossing buildings. So what I need to do is to ask you to be careful that you do actually connect to the node. Okay. Next question. Remember, the gardens give you a guide to tell you how many buildings or building sections there are. When you're mapping from new, even out in the rural area, there's generally a building to each piece of land. So look at the hedges and the fences and that sort of thing, and that will tell you the individual plots, and look for a building there. That way, it also helps you to not miss individual buildings because you're actually looking for them on those pieces of land. If there are no more questions,
yeah, Ralph. Yeah, there are. Let me. Yes. So the question about from Daniel about the expansion tool. I think we were talking I think it's Alt A. Trying to do this off the top of my head, but the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you were demonstrating it with a circular building.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yes. Right. That's changing your building tool. So if we go into building tool mode, you see that I've got the rectangular building tool there. If I use Alt Z and I do that, you can see that the node changes to a bullet head. That's for a circular building. Okay. And all you do is the diameter of the building, click, and it gives you the circle. Select the outline of the circle and use the Control Alt key, and you can resize it this way. Okay, so that's in the select mode, Control and Alt, resize. Okay, get rid of that, and
then one last one, I think, from Becky, just asking if it's okay to map buildings separately in case they just share a wall. Yeah, go ahead. I could take that one too, but go for it.
Yes, no, there's no problem to that. You can see these are all joined together. These are now the back, either garages or sheds to the main house. But if you are unhappy about linking them together, okay, they can be drawn as individual buildings. That's not a problem. What you can do is to make sure that you don't jump to the other building, but you want to make it close. Hold down the Control key, and that stops your cursor from snapping to the nearest building. And you can add buildings quite close to each other. Okay, hold down the Control key and carry on. Now, if I tried to do that again without holding down the Control key, what would happen is it would snap to that building and you would have it linked. Okay. Please remember, if you want to add the buildings close together, to stop the building tool from snapping to the nearest building, hold down the Control key and you can map your buildings quite close to each other. Has that answered the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay.
I think so. I'll take back over, Ralph. Thanks a bunch. Yeah, I think we're gonna jump back to Geoffrey now, and then I'll do my housekeeping here. I'm gonna jump back to Geoffrey, and then I think Michael's gonna conclude today on conflict resolution, and we're gonna take out the bit on relations, just time-wise. Going to try to get this wrapped up in the next half hour. So thanks, folks, for bearing with us and sticking around. And yeah, feel free. We are recording this, so yeah, we'll put it up if folks have to leave and that kind of thing. But yeah, Geoffrey, I think you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. Just coming in back with filters and selections. So I'll just take you through that. And I'm just going to continue from where I left off. I still have the dataset that I had downloaded from the tasking manager. And I'm just going to use this to demonstrate a little bit about filters. So filters, the main importance of filters is to allow you to hide or highlight certain things you're interested in. And this is useful when you're doing editing sometimes, or even validation. So let us say, for example, you want to hide any other datasets and just have only buildings showing up in your data layer. You can do that. And the way to do that is to use, the filter window. So from the Windows menu, just make sure the filter option is activated, and it will show up on the right hand panel. So I'm just going to show you a few different types of filters and how to add them. So basically, there is the add button here, which will allow you to add the filter that you are interested in. If I click on add, it will open the filter window, and I'll just demonstrate with just the first one. So let us say I want to show only buildings in my data layer and hide everything else. I'll just put the filter string as building equals star, which is building all. So it will bring up all buildings with the different values. So if I submit the filter, my new filter string will appear in the filter window. So there are three checkboxes that work with the filter window. One is enable, hide, and then invert. And how do these work? So if I check all the three, I'll hide my imagery so that this is more clear. So if I enable and hide and invert, what is going to happen? JOSM is going to hide all the other different datasets and just highlight only buildings. If I uncheck the invert, what is going to happen is it's going to hide buildings and just show you all the other different datasets in your data. So there's hidden buildings and showing me everything else. If I uncheck the hide button, it will show me buildings, but other items grayed out. So I see the other items in the background, but grayed out, so they're not active. And you can build, of course, different types of, filters, strings. Another example I want to show you is this one here, which is highway equals unclassified, and or waterway equals all. So this one will filter out all roads that are unclassified, but combine it with waterways. So you can even combine two types of different objects in the filter. So I'll just show you my data set now, how it looks like. So you can see now it has it's showing me only unclassified roads and waterways, and I've filtered out everything else. And this is useful when you are doing things like validation and want to make sure your data is clean. The other one that is useful when you use filters is also to combine it with the to-do list. The to-do list is a plugin that is available in JOSM. Of course, you install plugins from the preferences menu, and then just have to search for the to-do lists, and then you have to install it by checking it and saying okay. But what this plugin helps with is to help you to check item by item. Sometimes when you do like field mapping and you want to import data into JOSM, and you want to check item by item, or if you are doing like an import and you want to check item by item, it's useful to do it, use the to-do list, and I'll just demonstrate it and also combine it with filters. So let us say I want to check all of the buildings in this data set and just go building by building. So what I'll do is to, to use my filter string and hide everything else apart from buildings. And then I'll select all the buildings by just drawing a rectangle. I'll repeat that. So when I draw a rectangle, it will select everything inside. But what this does now is that it's going to select the ways and the nodes. One thing that you want to do if you want to make sure only the ways are selected is to unselect the nodes, but leave the ways selected. And the way to do that is to use a shortcut, which is Shift plus U. So I'm just going to press Shift plus U, my keyboard. And what this has done is that it has unselected the nodes. So you can now see the nodes are in yellow color, meaning that they are not selected. When they're selected, they are in red. And now, because I have my to-do list here, I can now click add, and it will add for me all the buildings in this dataset to my to-do list. So now I can go on and check building by building. So I click on this, square that. So I can go on and check building by building, and you can mark an item that is done. And whenever you mark an item that is done, it jumps to the next one automatically. So as you are checking to make sure your data is okay, you can use this tool, that do list plugin. But I had to use filters to make sure that my data is brought in and I can check item by item. I'll just show you just one more filter that is useful. The other thing, if you click on add, you realize there are different values here that you can use. So it gives you even examples on how you can build your filter strings. So for example, I may want to filter out data, from a certain time frame. So I can use the timestamp filter, and I want to look at data that was added in this area since January of this year. And I'm going to submit my filter. So my filter is now here, and what I can do now is, it's what I'm looking at now is data that was added between since January of this year in this data frame. So I think everything has been added since January. That's why if I try to filter out, I try to hide everything. Let me just go back to 2018. Okay, so I've just changed. I want to see data that has been added since 2018, January, and you can see that's the data that it is showing me now. So that is another filter string, but you can come up with all different types of filters, and these are the examples of how you can get started with that. But the filters are very useful, especially when you are doing validation, or if you want to look at just a specific kind of data set. So that's the other thing that I wanted to show you. And I'll pause here if there are any questions.
I have one, if I may. So you've shown how to apply a filter to the data layer. Would it be possible to apply filters to the OpenStreetMap layer itself? I mean, the kind of the rendered OpenStreetMap?
Of course, this is OSM data, so now I'm filtering OSM data in JOSM. But if I understand your question properly, if you want to do filters on like the main OpenStreetMap website, you can't do that. You have to use another tool to be able to filter the data. You can't do it from the website.
Okay, just Michael showed me the other day that it's possible to also bring the OpenStreetMap layer as an imagery on here.
Yes.
But that's maybe then just not filterable. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's possible to have the SM like this layer as a background image, but it's just an image. So when you do the filter, it doesn't apply to the tiles in the image.
Okay, okay.
Any other question? If there's no other question, I'll hand over to the next person.
Geoffrey, there is a question on the chat. Robert is asking whether you can specify a specific time period for filtering.
Yes, it's possible to specify a specific time. I'll just demonstrate that again. So using the timestamp, so let us say I want to see the data that was contributed today in this area. So 2019, this is June. Okay, there might not be something for June, but let us say it is okay, I'll just test this. So up to so I'm just doing a filter which will show data from May 2019 to up to today. So that is June. Okay, so yeah, if I submit this filter, it will show me data that has been contributed in that range. So from since May 1st to June 1st. And you can also do a filter which shows you data that was contributed by a certain user in a certain area. So let's say you are doing validation and you want to look at a specific person's data, just pick it out from the data set. You can also do a filter like that. Does that answer the question? Okay. If there is no other question, then I'll hand over to the next speaker.
So that would be me again.
Okay, thank you.
Can you release your screen?
Yep, done.
Okay. So welcome to the last part here. Can everyone see my slides? Are they visible?
Yes, you can see them.
Okay, thank you. And well, just to come back to that last question by Matthias, filters only work on data layers, because anything else like not only the background imagery, satellite imagery, but also the map layers which are available are prefabricated bitmaps, so there is nothing we can filter in there. So finally, after you've done mapping, of course, you will upload your work to the database. And sometimes it can occur that a message like the one you see here pops up. So the first thing I want to assure you, that's what the headline says, it doesn't mean you did something wrong. Conflicts occur if someone else edited the same objects and saved them as you do, and saved them earlier than you do. This can pretty often happen in the context of a mapathon or generally a hot project, particularly at the borderline between different tasks tiles. And so one thing I can recommend is, if you work on a hot project or if you work in a mapathon, save often, so that at least conflicts are not that widespread and do not occur with quite a lot of objects. So if you see something like that, what you can do is you say, I always press the button which I highlighted here, synchronize entire data set. Because first of all, the option would be just to synchronize and deal only with one of those objects which are in conflict. But the real point is you want to know how big and widespread is that conflict. If just 1, 2, 3 objects are in conflict, then you can deal with them one after the other. And I will show you in the next slides how to do that. If you see that there are 50 or 100 objects in conflict, then the better option may be just to scrap that layer and start over again, because it's no fun going through all these bits. In this case, it detected just one conflict. Then you say, okay. And then there is a conflict tab in the Windows menu. The conflict tab is one of those tabs on the right side next to, well, just can show you. On this right side, you've got a couple of tabs, and if you go here to Windows, there's one conflict, and now you have the conflict tab down here where you can select individual ones and resolve them one after the other. So in this case, there's one conflict here which I was notified about, is visible in that conflict window, and selecting this one and pressing the resolve button or simply double clicking on it will open up a resolution window for that particular object. We have to go through the objects one after the other in order to resolve the conflicts. Resolving conflicts means, what does this window show us? The left part where there's different colors, that's my version, the one which I was trying to upload. The right side, also the colored one, is the current version on the server. And the different colors tell me what's wrong with it. It starts out with a couple of nodes. It's a highway, and it starts out with a couple of nodes marked in green. These are the same in both versions that I'm happy with. The red nodes were added in one version, and the ones in Salmon are present but at different positions. There might also be some marked in light blue. This would mean that different tags are there. So what we can see here is I added some nodes at the end of the highway. That's what you can see in the left part, because all these red nodes here at the end are present only in my version, not on the server, and they're marked in red. So these are the ones which I added. And as you can see, the version on the server also shows some red nodes interspersed here. These are the ones which were added by another user. And he also moved some nodes around because there are some different than mine. If the situation looks like this, resolution is pretty straightforward because I was only dealing with the end. I know that I only added nodes at the end. So anything which is changed before that can be accepted. And I just have to add my nodes at the end, and merging that together will result in a new version which contains the best of both worlds, of the edits which had been taking place in the meantime and my edits, which I was just trying to add. So, and that's where the center column is good for. There I can compose a final version out of those new versions. So I can select ranges of nodes in each of the versions and then use these arrow keys here in order to move them to this final version. And when I'm done, I can upload this merged version. So the thing one does here is, in this case, I would select all of the nodes in the right column and then press this lower button in here in order to obtain this one here. The merged version now shows all the nodes from the right column, which is the version on the server, because I said I didn't take care of any of these changes. They will all be okay. And then I simply have to add my new nodes, which are shown in red down here. So I'll mark them, which turns them blue. And then I hit this button, which is marked here in pink. It says add them at the end. Another option would be to use the topmost button. If I would have changed something right in the beginning of that highway, then I would use the topmost button and add them at the beginning. Or I can select any of the nodes here in this merged version, and then those two buttons would be visible, which says add those nodes immediately before or after the selected node. So I have full control how I can compose a new version out of my version on the left and out of the current version on the server on the right. Sometimes it happens that the center column is in a freeze state, so there will be a button here where you can toggle between freeze and unfreeze so that you can edit things. And finally, I've got a version here which consists of all the nodes from the server plus my edit nodes here from the left, and then I'm done. I could unfreeze it, I could delete things from here, I could manage it until I'm confident now I've got a good version, I'm good to go. And then I say apply resolution. And that means this version here has been merged into my current working layer. And once I'm done, I can upload it. So that means you say apply resolution, this window disappears, and we will get back to the normal JOSM with the conflict window. And if there were several more conflicts, so this one would be left out because it has already been resolved. And if there were more conflicts, I could tackle the next one just in the same one open this window, have a look if I can easily figure out what would be a good merged version, compose it in the way I have just shown you, and then finally apply the resolution. And as I said, it takes a bit of time. You can get used to it, but you typically won't be happy dealing with more than, say, 5 to 10 such conflicts. I think, particularly if it was a buildings project or anything else done easily, just scrap your layer and restart. That should be easier than going through 20 or 30 conflict resolutions. But as I hope I could show you in here, conflict resolution is not something really complicated. JOSM has a good tool to help you, and where you can compose a new version out of those versions on the server and your local one which you wanted to upload. So that is what I was going to show you in here. Are there any questions at this stage? So currently, just a moment. Yes, I don't see anything in the chat. Is there anyone who'd like to speak up and have a couple of other questions? Because otherwise we'll be coming to the end of this webinar. Okay, there don't seem to be.
Thank you, that was amazing.
Yeah, there don't seem to be any more questions left. Give us a day or two in order to prepare the recording of this video, and we will share it on our YouTube channel. I think there will be a mail sent to everyone who registered. And of course, you can also ping us if something is unclear. Just a moment, please. Yeah, that would be a good email address to catch any of us. So if you've got any further questions, write to the training working group, and some of us will take care of that. So thanks for being with us. Thanks for staying tuned in for nearly 2 hours. I hope we could show you some tricks here on how to use JOSM at an advanced level. And of course, thanks to my co-speakers, Russ, Geoffrey, and Ralph. And well, maybe we can see some of you on one webinar, another webinar, or on one of the projects. And well, goodbye for now.
Thank you, guys. It was wonderful learning from you.
Thanks, everyone.